Okay, good morning, good afternoon, good evening, depending on when you're listening to this slide presentation. So earlier on in this project management course, uh, we've looked at very basic introduction up to the different knowledge areas, the process group. We've considered quite a whole lot of process groups, and today we're going to continue the series from slide 201. So this program has about 300 slides. So I've divided it into six. So I'm considering a session, 50 slides for a section, and each section is roughly about between 30 to 50 minutes. So I want to keep it short, make sure it's not, it doesn't exceed 1 hour. Okay. So now, before now, we looked at, before now we looked at costs, right? Now we want to look at resources, resource management. Now, every project is going to need one form of resource or the other. So project management includes the process, or rather, project resource management includes the process to identify if I will need 10 laptops to deliver a project. I will need to identify if I will need 10 human capital, right? 10 personnel to deliver a project. I need to identify. After identifying, I will need to acquire. That's why one of the knowledge areas in project management is procurement. Procurement is very connected to resources because it's until you have defined your scope, you've looked at your cost, you've now looked at what are the resources I need to be able to deliver that. Then before you can now go ahead to acquire, before you can now go ahead and procure. So procurement is very critical and very important. So you identify first, then you acquire, then you now manage your resources. For instance, if you have facilities, facility management, for instance, if you have resources, human capital, HR, human resources is another type of resource. If you have equipment, right, you need to maintain most of this equipment. So both the project team, the physical resources, the team resources, needed for the successful completion of the project in trying to identify, acquire, and manage them is what you call project resource management. So, project team comprises of people with assigned roles and responsibilities. You don't just hire people for a projectized kind of organization. Most of the rules they get people to sign up for are tied to responsibilities. So HR managers, one of the things they do is that they look at what the organizational structure is, or rather what the organizational goals are. Then they look at what are the kind of roles that we need to be able to uh, uh, achieve those organizational goals. Then they draft out the different responsibilities they're going to do on a daily basis to be able to help achieve that organizational goal. Right? So team, physical resources. At times you will need tools. At times you will need equipment. At times even property, physical property, houses, right? Clothes, shoes, right? Safety wears, different kind of things that you're going to need as physical resources. At times you also need team resources, right? Includes people, contractors, all of them working to manage the project effort. So we are here. We're looking at uh, project resource management, right? We have about four more to go. So plan resource management. So for all of our resources, we need to plan them. We don't just say, okay, we need this, we need this, we need this. We need proper planning. So planning cut across most of the knowledge areas, right? So plan resource management is the process of defining how to estimate, acquire, manage, and use your team and physical resources. So what are the documents do you need to properly plan your resource? You need your project charter, bird's eye view of what the project is all about, was the business case, why you need the project, was the advantage of the project, the cost of the project, and the rest. You need that bird's eye view document. You also need your project management plan. You need your project document. You need all of this other information. How are you going to be able to determine your resource? expert judgment, organizational theory. How is your organization structured? Remember earlier on we looked at different types of structure: projectized, matrix, hybrid, uh, different kind of organizations. We looked at all of that. Now, data representation. We will need to represent our data. We need to represent how our resources is going to be like. At times, we will need to use flowchart diagrams. We need to use Venn diagrams. We need to use kind of what we call organograms, right? Especially for a kind of hierarchical structure to tell how our team members are laid out and what relationship they have between each other. And of course, we need to conduct meetings. And every day, what are we going to have? We are going to have our team charter, which is a bare eyes view of what how our team members are related within the team, and what the responsibilities are like, and what the goal of each particular team or each sub team is going to be. Then, of course, we're going to come up with a resource management plan. Then we might need to update our project document updates. Okay, now you see, this is what we call an organogram. So a project manager has to ensure that an organizational chart is prepared for every project to identify the roles and reporting schedule, or reporting relationship, or reporting structure. Now, you see the project manager, you see the administrative assistant. Okay, now so you have the administrative assistant, then of course you have financial analyst, domain expert, technical team. So if you check this, this is not a projectized kind of structure. This is more or less a functional structure, right? Because everything has to do with finance, you have it here. Anything has to do with the different domain, depending, technical, maybe you have a business analyst, maybe you have a IT team, you have like that. So more of the different functions to be able to help achieve the project, you have them like that. So you have this is more or less a functional team. Now they will call the RASI chart, right? So it's called the responsibility assignment matrix. So if we have different tasks or different activities, the question is, how do we assign it to people? There are different forms. One is somebody can be responsible for something, somebody can be accountable for something, somebody can be consulted for something, somebody can be informed. For instance, there's some decisions, there's some activities that you're going to be conducting. Top level management might just be informed or responsible for it. So you see, informed and responsible, it's always before the activity, whereas accountable and responsible, informed after the activity. Then accountable and consulted is actually the activity itself. So for instance, you might not need to tell me that I want to do I want to test plan, for instance. A manager tell me that I want to test plan, right? So you might just need to inform me if I'm top level management. Or might just need to consult me. Brother, this two is I actually took it the wrong way. So these two, responsible and accountable, is the guys actually working on the project. So this is more or less for top management. So you might just consult me. You might just inform me. At times, most of my staff, they might want to work on some things. They might do this, that, and they just tell me, okay, we need to do A, B, C. I say, go ahead. So they've just consulted me, or they might say, okay, we need to input on this. So somebody is responsible for that, and somebody also accountable for that. Are we together? So look at this responsible assignment matrix. You have different activities. You have John, you have Chris, you have Sally, you have Tink. These are four different persons. So for the project plan, this guy is accountable for it. This guy is responsible for it. This guy is responsible for it. This guy is responsible for it. For this configuration management, like you see, right? So everybody, you can use the RASI matrix to be able to tell people what they are in charge of doing at every point in time. Now, estimate activity resources. So, estimate activity resources is the process of estimating team resources and the type and quantity of materials, equipment, supplies necessary to perform project work. Very important. So, estimate activity resources, very important. So, all of the resources that we need, right? We need to understand the type. For instance, if you for human resource, for instance, if you need 10 persons, how many senior level persons do you need? How many 10 persons is the quantity. Now, type, how many senior officers do you need? How many intermediate or mid-level officers do you need? How many junior staff do you need? How many entry-level officers do you need? How many trainees, interns do you need? That's for human capital, for instance. How many is the experience? That will tell you the type and combination, because that's good. That's not what's going to determine the cost or the salaries or the allowances you're going to pay to those persons. So estimating your resource is very, very, very important. These are the documents that you need for it. These are the processes, or rather the tools and techniques you use to do that, and this is what you're going to have at the end of the day. Okay, look at this very simple example. As a project manager, you have been asked to assemble a highly skilled project team. List 5 steps you will take to achieve these tasks. Don't forget, before you can achieve these tasks, you able to first atomize all of these guys. So most of the things you're going to be doing is here. You're going to be using some expert judgment, meetings, analogous estimating. You're going to be checking what are the salary of so and so persons, so and so persons, how much are we going to pay. So all of those things are going to, because you want to benchmark whatever you're doing based on some precedence, right? So of course your expert judgment is very important. Okay, acquire resource. So how do you acquire resource? So this is decision making. So let me just make this a little bit smaller. So for you to acquire resource, some of the techniques you use in doing that is uh, decision making, interpersonal. This is interpersonal actually. This is interpersonal. Okay, let me take this off. This is interpersonal and team skills. Because for you to acquire resource, for you to be obtaining, onboarding new team members, for you to be able to pick up supplies, materials, you need pre-assessment. For instance, if you want to onboard some team members, at times you need to do some window shopping. I don't mean team members, I mean gadgets. You might need to do some window shopping. You might need to do some price survey. At times, you might need virtual teams able to help achieve your project. Then you need interpersonal and team skills to be able to work with people. Okay, so develop team. So you need to be able to not just acquire your team members for your project to be successful. You need to also develop those team members. Very, very important. And one of the ways you can develop your team member is co-location. So co-location, we're talking about when you have your team members all in one place. Recognition and award. How do you make sure that they have this sense of belonging? Because these are some of the things that help to deliver your project to the fullest. You need to do training, or you want to have a virtual team, right? The question is that, do you want to combine, do you want to have kind of a hybrid system? You want to have people in one location, people from different locations scattered around the world, and they communicate through what technology? Are you going to be using Zoom? Are you going to be using Vidyard? Are you going to be using Google Meet? Are you going to be using Microsoft Teams? Are you going to be using what kind of communication means are you going to be using? Don't forget, communication is a knowledge area on its own. So we're going to be looking at all of the ways we're going to be able to do that. That's why I said most of these things are very, very connected. So these are some of the ways you can develop your team. And of course, manage your team. Team performance and assessment. project staff assignment, um, resource management plan. All of these guys, right? While trying to do that, some of the techniques you can use that is project management information systems. You might need to uh, manage your team right through whichever of this way. And the question is that if you have feedbacks, if you have to resolve issues within your team, how do you make sure that you optimize the performance of everyone? And don't forget, some companies use project management information system. They use software. Some people use Slack. Some people use Google softwares. Some people use Monday.com. Monday, the day of the week. Monday.com is a software you can use to manage. It's an information system application that you can use to manage, right? Provide feedback, resolve issues, and manage team changes to optimize project performance. Don't forget that is your goal. Deliver an awesome project. And there's some concepts, there's some dynamics you need to understand when it comes to team members. There's what we call forming, there's what we call storming, there's what we call norming, there's what we call performing, there's what we call adjourning. Now, if we are trying to set up a medical lab, for instance, you got to bring people from different walk of lives, right? Even take a relationship, for instance, a husband and a wife. That's a team. They achieve several projects through their lifetime. The first instance, the team formally comes together. So, hello, how's today? How's everything? How was work today? That is just forming. With time, they start having disagreements, storming. When you have a stormy session, a stormy weather, people don't tend to agree. And if you keep to all of the things you've been learning with respect to human resource management, you may not start having some norming. Trust develops within the team. Things now start becoming a norm. Now, the team starts delivering results, they now start performing. Then the team is disseminated after project completion. There are several instances where even people that have worked together in a particular company, after some time, they no longer work together again, but they, after they've adjourned, but they still work later on in projects together, either as individuals, as freelancers, or as corporate entities. Are we there? So you need to understand these processes. So you don't assemble a team and just expect them to start performing. No, you need to be able to help them to create a bond. One of the classical ways, for instance, myself, I do this, is to make sure that you do uh you interchange responsibilities within their areas of strengths. Somebody's weakness, somebody else in another team can take care of that person. That way, you, because once you don't have a relationship, once people don't take this job, their work, as something they live and they can die for, then this process is going to not is this process is not going to come too easy for you. For any project you want to do, you want to make sure that you allow your team, make your team, strategize for your team to go through this process very, very, very fast. So they will have to form, they will have to have some issues. People are going to have different viewpoints, but you want to make sure that within time frame of days and weeks, you don't want to allow 3 years, 4 years before people are able to work together and develop projects. I've worked in teams where you see a software developer is looking at a back-end developer is looking at a front-end developer and is not comfortable with how he does his coding. So even at times he will have to trash everything and start all over again. So at that point, that's what you call the storming session. So you need to work towards making sure that they norm together and they understand themselves. They develop trust amongst themselves. They understand that this person wants my good. This person is not just trying to make it easy for himself while neglecting the others. And so they can now start performing. So it's good as a project manager, you're able to help people achieve this. Okay, conflict resolution techniques. The question is, if you have a conflict, how do you resolve it? Yes. How do you resolve the conflict? Withdraw and avoid, compromise and reconcile, smooth or accommodate, force or direct. All of the definitions are very, very clear. Collaborate or solve problem. So here, resolution to the conflict is deferred for a later date or later time. And at times, it's a way to solve problems among team members. Because as a project manager, you're going to be dealing with several team members. So each of those team members, you need to learn, you need to understand how to work with every person. At times, you have problems amongst persons, and your best bet is going to be let's leave this for now. Let's do something else. We'll talk about this later on. That is withdrawal, or you avoid it. Another time, a certain degree of dissatisfaction is brought to all the parties involved, so that one person or two persons is not winning all, and the other person is losing. So you have a win-lose situation. Sometimes you want to have a win-win, a lose-lose situations whereby you everybody reach at a compromise. Then you have smooth to accommodate, you have force or direct, you have collaborate or problem solve. So they're very, very self-explanatory. Resource control. So control resource is the process of ensuring that the physical resources are assigned, even the human resource, any of these resources that you've assigned and allocated to the project are available as planned. People management, funds management, hardware, facility management. Because if they are not available at when due, it's going to affect the delivery. And at times, some things can be underutilized. At sometimes, some things can be overutilized. So you don't want that to be able to happen. When we start our Microsoft 2016 project training, you're going to understand how some of these things are done within the software. Okay, that's that for resource management. So next thing we're going to be looking at is communication. What does the word communication mean to you? People are going to be able to deliver their intents. People are going to be able to deliver results. So people are also going to be receiving all of this. So that two-way process of transferring information from one thing to the other is what you call communication. So people are going to be talking. People are going to be saying something. People are going to be passing information. The project manager spends 90% of time ensuring proper project communication. For instance, you have issues where I've had issues where the client says, "Okay, I'm going to report this. I'm going to set it up as a criminal issue. I'm going to do this. I'm going to do this. You guys collected funds from us and you did not deliver the project and whatever." At times, most of these issues are just because of poor communication. So one of the principal responsibilities of a project manager is to ensure communication amongst all of the team members, stakeholders, management, the project managers, the management, and every other stakeholder that is involved in the project. There is need for communication. Now, project communication can be written, and if it is formal, things like a project management plan, a project charter, a long distance communication. It can be informal, whereas still written, but email, notes, right? WhatsApp conversations, right? Text write-ups, all of that. It's that those are informal. And at times you want to go through a formal means for verbal presentation. So you come, you run through your slides and you do some presentation, right? Like for instance, what I'm doing now is a verbal, formal presentation, right? These days, at times it might be difficult for you to proceed to the client to do a stand-up presentation. You might just need to record everything and send over YouTube or video or any recording software, and the client receives that presentation, and it can serve as that communication. It can just be a conversation. And at times, that depending on what you want to, the information you want to pass, that will not determine which of the type of communication you're going to use. For instance, there are some conversations you don't just have because those information are critical. You want to make sure that they are properly gotten together and they are presented, or they are sent. They're added to most of those templates, those documents. So communication can either be written or verbal. Further, it can be formal or informal. So these are all the things we just explained now. So the questions that require choosing a communication type for a given situation can be expected in the exam, especially if you're writing the project management exam. Okay, so what do we have next? Communication method. So there's what we call push and pull. For instance, for persons that are into digital marketing, this is one of my areas. That's what we call push marketing and push marketing, right? Push marketing and pull marketing. For instance, if you watch your TV, that's what we call push marketing, right? You walk across the road and you see several signposts. That is push marketing. All of the information is just sent to you, bombarded to you. You are receiving several types of information across during the day. You don't know what to choose. You have several types of adverts. In terms of project management, for instance, now you have things like emails, voicemails, postal mails. Most of the times, it does not necessarily mean it was received on and understood, but those information are passed through. Now, within your project, you want to make sure you choose what best is going to be able to pass whatever type of information you are sending across your team members, across your stakeholders. For instance, you cannot just send a WhatsApp message and expect that or something that's very critical and important for something that is around 12 noon, you sent it by 11 and you expect it's going to be taken serious. That time, you need interactive communication. You need to make a phone call. You need to ask for a video conference, ask for a physical meeting. And this is the most effective and efficient method of communication to ensure a common understanding because it is real time, right? There was a client we deployed a medical laboratory management system for. For up to 2 months, it was difficult for us to come to terms to have a physical meeting. Do you know at a point, for instance, us as Haltech, we became very, very tired of the whole thing because it's either they have issues with some of their systems. The project was completed as at, let's say, for instance, 3 months ago. So let's say 3 months down the line, there's no formal closure to that project. And for instance, our project managers want to ensure that we close the project. One of the things we did since this was not working was we just initiated a video conference through Zoom and did a pre-recording of the entire handover and sent over. They received vetted, and within less than 2, 3, 4 hours, we got a reply that everything is okay, we can do everything, and within 24 hours, we were able to hand over, and the balance payment for the job was paid. That is the power of interactive communication. But before then, you will be assuming when you just do a push communication, or is it a pull communication? A pull communication, for instance, when you have a website, you have a bulletin. So now the person is going to receive the information. It's even more effective compared to push, right? If I want to advertise project management training, for instance, and I want to use any of this will be most efficient, followed by this, followed by this. Here, I'm just going to be sending mails to people. It might be random people. Here, if I put a poster, if I put a bulletin, if I advertise on the website, it's going to pull people to that particular information. And I'm going to have some responses to some persons that are very, very critical and interested about the training, compared to where you're just mass mailing people, sending voice message, doing voicemail, blah blah blah, and the rest. Whereas if you pick up your phone and make a call, you might likely make more impact because this is real time. So project communication management includes the process necessary to ensure that the information needs of the project and stakeholders are met through the development of the artifacts. When you say artifacts, anything of high value, anything of importance with respect to the project is regarded to as an artifact. And implementation of activities designed to achieve effective information exchange. In communication, we're trying to talk about effectiveness, right? We're trying to talk about effectiveness. We're trying to talk about uh, what's it called again? Delivery of project. We're trying to talk about people understanding themselves. So if people don't understand themselves, you're going to have issues. So that's why project communication is an important aspect in project management. And as a project manager, you want to ensure that the stakeholders get timely access to the required information. People understand what is happening. Okay, the next thing, okay, so plan communication management. So this is one process group. So how do we do that? Expert judgment, communication requirements analysis, communication technology. So might be using some softwares or might be using some applications. So when you talk about plan communication management, you're trying to understand how. So anytime you hear the word planning, you're trying to ask yourself the question, how are you going to do whatever you're going to do? With other things we've been talking about communication, how do you want to communicate? What means are you going to use to communicate? How do you assign responsibility for who is going to do the communication? Who will do the communication? How will the communication be done? Right? What are the technologies that are going to be involved in doing the communication? How are we going to represent data? How are we going to represent workflows? Very, very critical. So here in doing this, we need this information. Then we need to do it using any of these tools and techniques, right? Expert judgment, communication requirement analysis. We need to analyze where our team members, where our stakeholders, where our top level management. These are the three categories of people that needs to get information. The team members, management, stakeholders. Some people might be in a very remote area. So doing a conference call over the internet might be a challenge. So you want to be asking yourself, can you just do a normal phone call but a conference call? It has happened to me several times where somebody is in a very remote area and you still want to do a conference. So the question is, should you use Zoom? Should you use Google Meet? Or should you just use a telephone conversation, but a conference call? So at the end of the conference call, somebody now does the minutes of the meeting and sends to everybody via mail. So we have records for it. So there you are looking at your requirement before you are deciding what technology you want to use. People need to also have interpersonal and team skills, right? Very, very important. Then manage communication. Here is the process of ensuring timely. So even when you have decided that, okay, this is how we are going to communicate, this is the frequency of our communication. Okay, we are going to communicate for this particular project. We're going to have a meeting every Friday by 6 p.m. Right? The communication is going to be via email on Wednesday and via Zoom call on Friday 6 p.m. Also, so and so person is going to be in charge of the communication. We're talking about resource now. We're looking at the RASI matrix. Who's going to be responsible? Who's going to be accountable for that? When it comes to that communication. So once you've assigned everything in managed communication, we're talking about how do we ensure timely and appropriate collection, creation, distribution, storage, retrieval, management, and monitoring, and the ultimate disposition of project information. Of course, this is very critical. It belongs to the executing process group. So this is work on its own. So very important look at this timely. So this is work on its own. Somebody should be responsible for ensuring that things are dispensed at the right time, or rather information is dispensed at the right time. So we'll talk about monitor communication. So monitoring and control very related. So you have all of this input, this is the way you do it, and this is the output you have. Okay, key takeaway. So communication is a two-way process of transferring information from one entity to the other. The four commonly used communication methods are formal written, formal verbal, informal written, informal verbal. By analyzing the basic communication models, problems in project communication can be identified. Project manager is responsible for timely availability of information to all the stakeholders. The three project communication management processes are plan communication management, manage communication, and monitor communication. So these are some of the keys. You could try them out and make sure you come back to the group if you have any question. Then I will pause the slide here. When we return, we'll talk about risks. We looked at schedule, we looked at scope, we looked at cost, we looked at quality, we looked at communication. We're going to be looking at risks because risks is very critical, risks is very important. We want to see, how do we define our risks? What are the key terms related to risks? How do we even calculate our risks? Our risk can be quantitative, our risk can be qualitative, right? Quantitative risk assessment, qualitative risk assessment. For instance, if you say we're going to be impacted, how are we going to be impacted? What are we going to lose? Are we going to lose $10 billion? That is kind of quantitative. If you say qualitative, what's the risk? If what is going to be the impact? We're going to lose customer loyalty. That is a qualitative. You're trying to qualify that particular risk. They want to identify the risk categories and say, how do we manage risks? Do we accept the risks? Do we transfer the risks? Do we try to mitigate the risks? There are several things we can do to whichever risks that we have. If we transfer risks, for instance, when we do insurance, you have a car, you have a project. If risk assessment is done and insurance is done, for instance, if anything happens to that particular project, you can have your premium and some additional funds released to you to be able to uh, uh, get back to business. So in the subsequent slide, we're going to start from slide 47. Yes, slide 42, 4, 7 or thereabouts, up till uh, okay. I think let me just trash out this part so that it will be even. So let's just start the risks. Now, what is risks? Uncertain event or condition. And don't forget, the risk can be positive, it can be negative. For instance, if I invest $10 billion and I get 10 million returns, this condition that has happened, it's now positive. So risk is an uncertain event or condition that, if it occurs, have a positive or negative effect. So the effect can be positive or negative. The question is that it's just an uncertain event. So it's not all times that some risks are come out positive. So when you hear the word risk, don't always think about negative. At times, the effect, the result can be actually positive. So this is the processes we're going to be looking at. Project risk management. So plan risk management. So risk management is the process of defining how to conduct how you see, anytime we talk about planning, we're talking about how. And as a project manager, once you understand how, it helps you a lot. Because if you can ask yourself all the hows, then you want to properly manage your project. But if you're not exhaustive about asking yourself all of the hows, you're going to have issues. So, plan risk management is the process of defining how to conduct risk management activities for a project. The key benefits of this process is to ensure that the degree, type, and visibility of risk management are proportionate to both risks and the importance of the project to the organization and other stakeholders. For instance, if the 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 negative result outweighs the positive result, of course you don't want to do that, right? So if the risk is too far on the negative side and we might not have any leeway for profit or whatever, you nobody wants to do that. So that is one of the advantages of you doing proper risk management. And expert judgment is very crucial for you to come up with a risk management plan. Look at this tax. Identify five risks that can affect or disrupt the new tax mobile app development. For instance, if you have the team members, they fall sick. If, for instance, um uh, an upgrade in platform technology or version. For instance, for iOS, we're developing a software for Android and iOS. Do you know that we deployed the one for Android, and when it was time for us to launch for iOS, we actually launched, but just a few weeks ago, Apple did an upgrade and it really affected and disrupted our launch because we took another almost 1 month plus to be able to now, or even 2 months to be able to now launch that app on the Apple Store. So these are some of the risks that um that affected that particular project launch. So you could do a brainstorming section and come up with all of the different tricks that can come up with respect to a launch of a new mobile app software. Okay, from the next range of slides from 251 here, identify risks, up till to 304, we're going to be concluding the training. Thank you very much. So we'll ride on with identify risks.